This week, we're talking about when ECW invaded Raw in 1997. So let's put our 90s caps back on and go back to the 90s. A lot of you probably don't remember that. I do. It was a great time to buy houses for a quarter. So it was 1995 when WWF had King of the Ring in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And the final match was Savio Vega versus Mabel. And ECW's home was Philadelphia, and their fans were used to a different kind of wrestling. So during this match, which nobody wanted to see, the fans started chanting ECW. Now, this is the first time Vince McMahon claims he heard about ECW and took notice of them. Fast forward a year to 1996, and it was the Raw after WWF In Your House Mind Games. And Savio Vega and a young man called Justin Hawk Bradshaw, for those of you who remember that gimmick of Bradshaw's, it was not great. We're having a match, but in the front row sat Tommy Dreamer, the Sandman, and Paul Heyman, each wearing something that said ECW on it. Later in the match, Sandman would spit beer into Savio Vega's eyes, causing Brett and Savio Vega's eyes, almost causing a massive fight between the WWF people and these three ECW guys. Now, the thing is, only a few people in WWF knew this was going to happen. Savio Vega being one of them. So the ECW guys got thrown out and got the Eliminators, Cronus and Perry Saturn, in a parking lot and took off as fast as they could because they thought there was going to be an actual fight. Because Bradshaw was pissed and Gerald Briscoe was pissed. And Gerald Briscoe was ready to go out to the parking lot and actually fight them until Bruce Pitcher told him it was all a work. And then he was pissed that they didn't tell him in the first place. So the next Monday Night Raw, Taz is in the audience with a sign, and Bill Alfonso's with him that says Sabu fears Taz. And he jumps the guardrail. Once again, nobody knows this is going to happen except for a few people, and gets into a fight and breaks a photographer's shoulder. So this seems like it. So it's a work, but it's also kind of a shoot. For those of you who know what those two words mean. Meaning it's real to some people, but to the people sitting it up, they know it's not really real. Now, this was supposed to be the build-up to ECW's first pay-per-view, but thanks to the Mass Transit interview, their first pay-per-view was canceled. Now, this is leading up to 1997. In April 1997, they rescheduled their first pay-per-view, and in February of 1997, they were back on Raw. Because during a match, Jerry Lawler put Paul Heyman on the phone, or Paul Heyman got on the phone with Jerry Lawler, and Jerry Lawler invited Paul Heyman and the ECW bunch to come down there the next week at Raw in the Manhattan Center and show them what they got. Now, Jerry Lawler was very antagonistic of ECW and Paul Heyman when he was on commentary. He didn't like him and Paul Heyman had a history together because Paul Heyman worked with Jerry Lawler in Memphis, and Paul Heyman refused to do a spot coming off a scaffold. He refused to even go up to the scaffold, which made Jerry Lawler very, very mad. So ECW got there, and Paul Heyman, and you got the first match, and then the Eliminators come out, deliver their finisher to a crew person, and Paul Heyman comes out and announces ECW is there to loud cheers from the audience. And then Paul Heyman goes on the announce desk, and we see a mixture of WWF matches and ECW matches throughout the night, including the main event being Devon Dudley versus Tommy Dreamer. Now, Sandman would get involved in this match and bleed, and they'd show the blood, even though that was not WWF policy at the time. Now, the next week on Raw, Jerry Lawler and Paul Heyman would have a debate, kind of showdown type thing. And it was a great thing between the two of them, some of their best work. And this led up to the first pay-per-view of ECW's, which was not one of their best pay-per-views, but they had a lot of passion behind it. Now, you might be wondering, where's Rob Van Dam? Well, Rob Van Dam came along and started calling himself Mr. Monday Night and sided with Jerry Lawler. And Jerry Lawler became his mentor, and Sabu sided with Rob Van Dam and Jerry Lawler. And so that led to matches with Jerry Lawler. That led to a match at a pay-per-view between Jerry Lawler, Rob Van Dam, and Sabu versus Tommy Dreamer, the Sandman, and Rick Rude, which Rick Rude, who was retired, then turned on Tommy Dreamer and Sandman, causing Jerry Lawler and his friends to get the victory. Now, this all led up to July in Detroit. There was supposed to be a couple matches that night, and one of the matches there was supposed to be was Rob Van Dam versus Road Dogg, which didn't happen. The reason, there are some disagreements backstage, and they're supposed to end up being a SummerSlam match between Rob Van Dam and Sabu versus Tommy Dreamer and Sandman, which was ultimately pulled from the card. And after July, it ended the ECW WWF partnership on WWF's part, but not on Jerry Lawler's part. Jerry Lawler then went to ECW Arena, walked in, and started bad-mouthing ECW from there. He described it as the devil going to heaven. And he thought it was going to cause a riot. But ECW was known for his fans rioting. And so he continued to work with them for another few months, wrestling people like Tommy Dreamer, because he thought the angle was so good. Did he really hate ECW? He says he didn't, but just the angle was so red hot, he had to keep it up. And that was ECW's brief invasion of Raw in '97. It was entertaining to watch. It was anything could happen. It gave ECW a little kick in the pants to, expose you to a national audience. It gave WWF maybe a few more people tuned in to WWF who was getting their butt kicked by WCW. And it was a nice way to showcase both companies. Now, join me later in the week. We'll be looking at the Michael Madsen film. This was not done on purpose. Piranaconda.